Hi FlossTube, it's Lori McClary, textilist. Welcome to my channel. Alright, all of the quilts from this point out that I'm going to show you are in some type of progress or process of being pieced. The first one I'm going to start with is, I think it's my oldest quilt whip. And it is called the Montana Cartwheel. It is a paper, mostly paper pieced. And then just some straight sewing. So the designer of this, it doesn't say on here, but I happen to know that this is Judy Niemeyer. And this is Judy Niemeyer before Judy Niemeyer was Judy Niemeyer, or we all know her, knew of her and of Quilt Works. I believe this is when she worked at the Quilt Gallery, which is in Kalispell, Montana. And I had walked into a quilt shop in Tumwater, Washington, and this quilt was hanging on the wall. And it's done in Kansas Troubles, and that is when I fell in love with Kansas Troubles. So I have the finished, mostly finished quilt blocks, and then I have some blocks that still need to be put together. But this is what each block looks like. And they go together on they are offset. That's what I was trying to think of. They're offset when they go together. Now, you would never have thought that this design would be as beautiful as this is going to turn out. And let's see if I can give you an idea of what that's going to look like. See if it will stay up here. So when you put the blocks together, they kind of go like that, and then it makes this beautiful design. I know that's probably a little, let's see if I can put another one up there. And so those come together, but they're offset. There are, I think when I started making this, it was going to be like a lap size, but I really wanted a larger size quilt, so I bought more papers to do more. And these are paper pieced. These are what the circles look like. And then you piece this, and you do a curved piecing, so this would be like doing a drunkard's path. And then you piece that, and then you piece those blocks together. Just cutting this quilt out was huge. Getting that part done was huge. So there's an example. Then that would go together. And then here, and then you would just keep going and keep building. I think I have enough cut out here to do a queen size quilt. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with that plan or not. I would love to get this quilt done, and I think it would look beautiful in the prim room. So I need to pull it out and investigate how much I have done. This, so you saw the colors of the blocks. They're definitely multicolored. And then this is the fabric for the binding. Or not the binding, the border, as much as the border is a border, and that as well. I am not going to do, or at least at this time, I'm not going to do that sawtooth border there. I think I'm going to stop where the other pieces and the other parts of the block end. So my oldest whip, would love to get that done and get it on a bed. It's gorgeous. I can't wait to have it done. I've got a huge stack of blocks here and just need to finish getting that together. So Montana cartwheel made with Kansas Troubles fabric, and I've got everything there. This just kind of gives you an idea of what that layout looks like. That's how it goes together. Okay, so the next one I have has, I think, 2 quilts in here. The quilt pattern looks like it came out of a magazine. I can't tell. Oh, it came out of Quilt Maker. I don't have, oh, I do have. It looks like 2011, but I don't have the month. And it's called Anitas Arrowhead. And this is just my black and white copy. Sorry about that. This is a collection for the cause. I believe this one's called Heritage. And just to tell you how old this layer cake is, the price on it was $35. So we know it's been a while. At least, well, let's see. Does it have a date on the one I haven't opened? It does not. It does. These are from 2008. So here's the one I have not opened. I love the birds on this. But without further ado, this is the block. And if I remember right, you do something like where you put 2 blocks together, you sew all the way around, and then you cut it different ways to put the block together. And so here are the blocks that I have done. This is so pretty. I love the colors. They're fall. Look at those. Aren't those gorgeous? So this looks like it'll be a pretty sizable quilt once I get it done. I may decide to stick to just the 1 layer cake. There's most of it left here, so I've only used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 pieces of fabric out of a 42, so I've got quite a few left. Yeah, so I should get on that, shouldn't I? So that's one quilt that's in here. The other one that's in here, I'm almost positive this came from a Missouri Star quilt early on. Yeah, it does. It says Missouri Star. I can't really show you the whole thing, but I will tell you it's called the Disappearing Hourglass Block. It takes, well, I'm using a layer cake. No, I'm not using a layer. It looks like I'm using 2 fabrics. This is really strange because I am not a blue person, so I'm not quite sure why I chose these fabrics other than maybe that's what I had handy at the time. So this is the block. They are both batiks, and it looks like it's more or less the same block all the way through. I'm kind of looking at it here. So I believe what happens is you start out with half square triangles. Got a lot of blocks made here. You start out with this, and then you cut it and resew it back together to become this block. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with this because, as I said, I'm not a blue person. I may see if one of my quilting buddies wants to take over this particular WIP, or I may just finish it and quilt it and sell it. I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to reacquaint myself with the instructions to see exactly how long it's going to take to get that done. So there's 2 more. The next container that I'm opening, I'm kind of excited because I haven't looked at these in a while. There's actually fabric for several quilts in here. And the quilts are from Joe's Tiny Quilt Club, or Joe's Club. And they were called Joe's Little Women. I think I have 3 years worth of quilts in here. They're all tiny quilts. This one is from Club 11. These were the quilts that we were making, and this was sponsored and hosted by a quilt shop in Olympia called Bayside Quilting. And I went to, I went to Joe's Club there. I also went to Joe's Club at a quilt shop called Gigi's, which was in a little town that was next to Olympia, just down the road from Olympia. So I have all my folders here that have all of the patterns, and this is what my container looks like. It's plumb full of beautiful Joe Martin fabric, and I'll just pull out a couple blocks of quilts that I was working on. I believe this is all the same. Yeah, these are the same. So these are tiny. The like the center block here, I believe, is about 3/4 of an inch, which makes these 1/2 inch. So what you learned was how to piece, and these were probably on point, how to piece small quilts. So I have a lot of things here already pieced. This is part of a strip for one of those blocks. What else do I have in here? I have other small, tiny pieced things. And I mean, these strips here, and I think those are pre-cut, or I've cut them for that block, and they are like 1.25 inches. Oh yeah, looky here. See all these little guys? Very tiny. They're for tiny blocks for a tiny quilt. So I have a lot of beautiful fabric here. That's all Joe Martin. Here's some pinks. Oh my gosh, there is such gorgeousness in here. Some of her quilts, she was known for using these beautiful border prints. So I've got some of that in here. So I probably have, if I have 3 years worth in here, and each club had, let's see how much one that. They were all about the same. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So somewhere roughly 25 to 30 tiny quilts in this one little container. Of course, I want them all done and made. This was a free project from Primitive Gatherings. So I'm going to show you a quilt in a minute. It's called Somewhere in Time. It's a very intense, very large wool applique, and what Lisa would do, Lisa Bonjean, when you would do a block of the month, and they're not cheap, but there's a lot of wool. I mean, they're cost effective as far as getting the wool and all of the materials. But what she would do, at least at the time, and I think this is back in 2011, I could be wrong, she would send little freebies. So every month I would get my package for a block for the wool kit, and then I would also get this tiny little package with a pattern and the wool to do tiny little blocks. And so that's what these are. And this one is called To Plant a Flower. And she would do this as a gift, and then the year after that she would release the pattern. So some of you may have seen this pattern, or maybe even stitched it if you're a wool applicator. And then this was the finishing directions. So that is actually, it's kind of a wall hanging size, and so all of the flowers would go around this, and then in the center you would embroider, to plant a flower is to believe in tomorrow. The quilt that I keep referring to, the Lisa Bonjean one, that came the free. This was my first big wool applique project, and I still take this one with me to stitch group to stitch on. There's a lot of stitching involved. It's all fused, and some of the blocks are fully stitched. The quilt is called Somewhere in Time, and I will put, if I can find one, I'm sure I can, I will put a picture up here for you to see what the finished quilt looks like. But I'll show you some of the blocks that I'm working on. This is one that is currently being stitched. And as you can see, it's stitch intensive. And here is a finished one. And another finished one. Another finished one. I just love the stitching on the middle of these. And let's see, I think the rest that I have here they're fused, but they're not stitched. So there's this one. Better if I just held it up here. This one. This one. This is not for the faint of heart, and it is not a quick project. It's definitely a labor of love, but it's going to be so beautiful. Now, the picture that I inserted to show you the finished quilt, mine will not look like that. Oh, this one's half stitched. It's not completely done. I do plan on making mine a little bit less busy. I most likely will not use the sashing that it calls for, even though I have them all cut out and fused. I might use them for something else. And I'm probably going to put these on point. Let's see, almost there. There's another one. And another one. Now, when we were going through the process, she has a Facebook club that we all belong to, so we could commiserate and we could, give each other pointers. She could give us pointers. She recorded videos to show us specialty stitches. Somebody chose to do this not with a light background, but with a black background, and it was stunning, just stunning. In hindsight, I wish I would have done the black background, but this is still going to be just gorgeous. And these are all hand-dyed wools that you get from Lisa Bonjean. As I said, this came every month. I think this was a 12-month block of the month. And then you purchased the Valdani pack separately, and there's more than that. I've got some here and some here. This is what the little sashing looks like. I was in the middle of stitching it. This is what the sashing looked like, and there was sashing between every block. Let's see, do I have one that's stitched here? Nope, I do not. So this again is a long-term project. I'm not in any huge hurry to get it done. It's just nice to pick up and stitch on when I want to. And as I said, I showed you that other one that I keep in the car, the English paper piece one, and I also keep this in the car. So whenever I just get the urge, I pick it up and do some fancy stitching. And that's nice because most of the time I'm cross stitching at Stitch Group, but wool applique is a really great great relief to kind of back up and not always be doing something tiny, but something a little bit bigger. And then this is great because I'm learning a lot of other stitches. This is a very large quilt. This is one of 2 boxes. The other box is completely full of fabric that I haven't used yet, and the backing too, I believe. The next one that I have is called Enchanted Autumn. This is completely full of fabric and wool, and it is not all of the wool. And I don't have much done on it other than having started the first block. This is a vintage spool pattern, and that's by Verna Mosquera, and I'm probably mispronouncing your name. And Verna, if you're watching, which I doubt that you are, I apologize for not pronouncing your name correct. The quilt is 64 by 76. I still don't see. I don't see a date on it, but I know it's quite old. I'd say at least 10 years, if not older. So this is the one where I was pulling fabrics from my stash, and I believe this is the one where I went on a hunt for, several months, where I would go to thrift stores and I would go through their shirtings and look for shirtings that I thought would match that. In fact, this one right here, this is a shirting. Oops. And this is from block 1. And this is recycled wool. That was the other thing I would look for, is recycled wool. So some other fabrics that I have pulled to go with this, I'll just show you some. I've got a ton of tiny little pieces here that I'm trying not to lose. Here's some wool. Here's some more fabric. Here's some, I got a big bunch of, here's some more wool, Pendleton wool. I have a bunch of Kansas Trouble in here. Let's see, what else do I have in here? There's some Kansas Trouble. That looks like maybe a Joe Morton or a Thimbleberries. Just some beautiful colors here. So those are fabrics that I've pulled, which I may or may not use. And then I have lots of pieces of wool here to play with. My guild had went on a field trip to Pendleton Wool. We chartered a bus and we went to Portland and went to Pendleton, and they in turn opened the shop for us and gave us coupons. But while we were there, they brought out bins, and when I say bins, I mean like huge, ginormous bins of wool, and gave us a coupon. I don't remember what it was at the time, but it was very inexpensive, where we just bought scraps by the pound, and I came away with like 3 huge bags that were as big as me of scraps of Pendleton wool. So if you look at this, you can tell that this was cut from a blanket, but it is that beautiful mid to lightweight wool that will work wonderfully with, so here's another Pendleton, will work wonderfully with wool applique, which was my intention when I purchased it, was that I knew I wanted to do a lot of wool applique quilts. So that is, I think that's the last whip of wool applique. I've got a ton of kits, but that's the last whip. Well, I think this is my last grouping. I am kind of on the home stretch. I have not looked at all to see how much time I've been recording, so I'm not sure if this is going to make it into all one video or if I'm going to put it in another video. But let's get started and take a look. The next video is hanging in the prim room right now. It's unfinished. It's a top, but I still need to make it. I think I need one more row in it. Sorry about that. The throat's really getting dry. This pattern is by one of my very favorite quilt designers, and I think it's called Linda's Primitives. I don't have, this is just the picture of the cover. Many times, just like I do with my cross stitch, I make a working copy because I like to be able to write on my pattern and make notes and that sort of thing. But the pattern is called Aunties Beanstalks, and I'm going to put a picture right here of what it currently looks like hanging on the wall in the prim room. And this one uses a 60-degree ruler. I think it's a 60-degree ruler. I don't have my glasses with me, but it uses a ruler like this. And so basically you're cutting a lot of triangles, and then you're stitching them together in a manner that makes this really cute sunflower pattern. So I just have a huge variety of scraps here, and I have a lot still cut out. So I've got my blacks and my darks and my rusts and reds and purples, and then I have my tans. Most of these are either a Joe Morton or a Kansas Trouble or a homespun. There is some thimbleberries in there. There's, yeah, it's mostly Kansas Trouble. And then, as I said, the homespun is in there. And I just love the touch, the prim touch that using a homespun in with all of these fabrics give. So here's some more of the colors. This, of course, is a thimbleberries. I probably have more than enough here to finish that quilt into a nice, good twin size that's going to have a lot of drape. And then I will take all of the fabric that I have pulled for it and put back in my stash. I still have not figured out a really good way to deal with pieces like this. I'm not quite sure I subscribe to cutting them up for quilts as Lori Holt suggests. I think that there are fabrics that I have that makes sense, but not these. But having said that, I still need to figure out what to do with pieces that are, you know, that size. They are good enough to, definitely big enough to be used in a scrappy quilt. I'll probably end up just getting larger bins and putting those scraps by color into bins. So that is Auntie Beanstalk. I have a lot of her patterns. They're all very scrappy. They're just gorgeous. I love, love, love them. And I'd like to get that one done and completely finished and put on one of the beds in the prim room. The next one, this quilt, I ordered this block of the month, the same, it's actually not a block of the month, it's a block of the week, the same year that I was doing the wool applique. So I think it's 2015 because it says right on here. This is another Primitive Gatherings, and I loved this block of the week. So you got a little pattern for every block, and I'm not sure if I have a picture here. I will try to find a picture. This particular quilt is called Summer Breeze, and it's a block of the week. So every week during the summer period, probably June through August, maybe even June through early September, you got a little package of fabric and a little tiny thing. And when I say tiny, they're very tiny. So this is what we're talking about here. This is, I think that's 1.5 inches, probably 1.25 inches squared. So here's where I'm making the square and the square. See how tiny that is? And at the time that I started doing it, I just thought it was so fun, but I just did not have the wherewithal at that time to be working on thousands and thousands and thousands of these tiny little pieces. So this is something that I may cut out and just have sections of it ready Here's like little itty bitty tiny half square triangles that go on the outside of those. And here's the square and the square. I mean, these are what we're making. And those go, I don't want to lose any. Those would go in, so here, if you're looking at this, you can see that's the block. Those are the little tiny square and the square, and then these are all of the half square triangles. And like I said, I will put it up here. But the great thing is that you just got this enormous variety every week of different fabrics. And she has them all, oh, here we go. Here's one of the blocks. She has them all balanced out between the lights and the darks. Here's a block, and this block is, I'm guessing, I don't have it in front of me, I'd say this is probably a 5.5 inch square finished. So this is probably 6 inches here, but it will finish at 5.5 inches. I have two complete containers completely full of fabric. That is this quilt. And if I recall correctly, it's a fairly sizable quilt. I think it's like a full or queen size. Again, I could be wrong. It's been many years. This was 2015, so I don't remember. So that's a WIP. That one's most likely to stay a WIP for a very, very long time. The next one is a Blackbird design. You probably, if you've watched me for a long time, you have seen this. This is a applique quilt. I do use the applique method, and I don't have, I think all I have are my block of the month packets. So I'm going to show a picture up here of the quilt. The actual finished quilt is called Birds on a Wire, and it's out of the Birds of the Feather book. And this is the one where I mentioned before that I had bought the block of all of the block of the month from Carriage Country Quilts. In fact, you can see here, here's like one of the packages. So this is all the original fabric, or close to the original fabric that it called for. And what I have in here is a bunch of already turned pieces. I'm just going to show you here. Oh. And I have some finished blocks. So here's a block. And here's a block. And here's a block. If you go way, way back in my videos, you will see more of this in depth. Olivia B. and I did a little mini series of different methods of applique. So I show this in there. This is part of the block. So those are smaller pieces of a bigger block. And here's a bunch of other pieces. And do I have a finished picture of, yes. And the way they did their block of the month was really nice. I wish, oh good, I wish all of them did it. So here is the picture of that block. So that's one block of the quilt, which also has multiple components. But when I got the block of the month, what they would do is they would do this sheet where they took little snippets of the fabric and they laid them out and corresponded them to letters in the book. And so you knew which fabric to use for which piece, which is very nice because this is super scrappy and there's just a ton of different fabrics. And I have my hand applique thread in here, or one set of it, and all of the blocks. I'll just show you a few more just because they're so pretty. Oh, there's a glare there, but there's just, the whole quilt was so pretty. This is the one where I got the very last one at a quilt show. I was super excited when I bought it. So, Birds of a Feather, this one is of that book. It's called Birds on a Wire. If you're familiar with Blackbird Design, Barb and Alma would take one quilt design and they would each make their own version, and then they would name those versions. And this is that version. So let's, oops, got one hanging out here. Don't want to lose it. I'm going to put that in there. And then over here, this is another one that was sponsored by my local quilt shop in Olympia. This one I think was sponsored by Bayside Quilts. And what this was a designer showcase sampler. And it's done in reds and browns. And I believe this was using a very specific fabric line. It was Paula Barnes. That's what it was. So I think I have a couple of the blocks done and several of them cut out. So here's one block that I have done. And usually when we go to, this was a quilt club where you would go once a month, I believe, and you would pick up your fabric, and then you don't really sew anything at the club. You just kind of talk about, you know, issues you may encounter. The person who ran the club would have made the block ahead of everyone else, and so she would talk about whatever problems that she may have encountered or give suggestions, easier ways to do things. So yeah, it looks like that's all I have cut out. The fabrics on this are just gorgeous. I love, love, love this brown and red together. I've got some half square triangles here. And so it's the browns and the reds, and then it also has this kind of green brown that I really like. I want to pull these out here, but I don't want to unfold them because then they won't fit back in my container. So there's some of the fabric, there's some of the reds, there's that greeny brown that I was talking about. It's kind of like a twig. These are also labeled, so we knew which ones to cut. There's some pretty brown black in there. There's some more reds. That's just gorgeous. And this one, if I remember right, you cut pieces from, and then you recut them. So I keep them penned and labeled so I don't lose where I'm at in the process, because you never know when you're going to get back to it. It might be 10 years. And then this looks like that's all of the sashing and backing fabric. The next one I'm going to show you is it's a Medallion mystery quilt, and it's part of a quilt-along that the quilt shop that I worked in Olympia, it was Olympia and Tumwater. It's one that we as the employees and the owner designed as we went, and I don't have all of the pieces. In fact, I had just reached out to one of my quilt sisters and said, do you have the rest of the information for this quilt along, because I really would like to finish it. The center medallion, this is 1/4 of it, is an oak leaf, and I have some more here. And this was all needle turn. Needle turn is not my favorite. I will probably, this one, you can see where I've got a point here instead of it being rounded. I will probably finish this using the Appliquick method, but this is my fabric. It's a collection for the cause. So that's my background fabric, and then I have a lot of Kansas trebles in there. So that's you can see a theme, obviously. That's actually a thimbleberries. These are scraps from the Montana Cartwheel quilt, and these are the colors. So looking for the materials to have the pattern to finish that quilt, and we'll get back to that. Here is another Kansas Troubles quilt. I'm going to pull out some of the blocks that I have here. Let's see. So they're all just a little bit different. Here's probably some sashing fabric. Again, Kansas Trouble Reds are so gorgeous. And more fabric that's in here. And I think this is how far I've got. So this is also a Medallion quilt. And I haven't seen this in a long time, so where was I at? Oh, okay, well that's pretty. So what I've done is I did an Ohio star, and then I did sashing around it, and then I did disappearing 9-patch blocks around that. So where this is going to go, I don't know. I might even just stop it right here and quilt it and call it good. Make it a table topper or a wall hanging. I do recall when I was working on this I was trying to get a perfect Ohio star. This is not using the half square triangle method. This is using the bias. This is just using diamonds. So yeah, that's pretty. I like that. That may just be a table topper, and then I can take all of this other fabric out. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that pretty? Little treasures. This is a Kansas Trouble. Oh, okay. Well, I did have a larger plan. So this is something that I had mocked up on Electric Quilt. This was what I intended to do. So I'm going to have to consider that. I may go back because I'm not far from done. And then I just have a bunch of beautiful tan, green, and red scraps. Ooh, here we go. What do we got going on here? Oh, I've already started making the border. I have to finish this now. I'm so much closer than I thought. So I think what I have left to do on this one is let me see if I can get up close. They kind of look like leaves. And this is going to finish, this will be a twin size, a very generous twin size, 88 by 88, so maybe closer to a full size. And it's a square. So there's another whip that I really should pull out and finish. I'm closer than I thought on that one, and it is quite pretty. I really like that. That can go in the prim room. So we've just got a couple more. I'm going to fold this up and be right back. The next one I'm going to show you is a quilt. It's another crabapple hill quilt, which she generally combines embroidery and coloring, where you use crayons or pencils, colored pencils to color in, and piecing. I've had this pattern for quite a while. It's a 2009 pattern. It is called Snowman A to Z, and it's just adorable. And one day I was shopping in my Habitat for Humanity, and I came across, I hadn't started it, it was just a pattern, but I was shopping at Habitat for Humanity, and I came across a stack of blocks that had already been started, and guess what they were? I don't know who the embroiderer was that did these, but she did beautiful stitching. So I think there's like 2 or 3 blocks that are already embroidered. The rest of the blocks are already traced for the embroidery, the entire quilt. And this is not a small quilt. This is, let's see, does it say here? This is a 48.5 by 72.5 quilt. So I have all of the blocks that are either traced or stitched. I think there's one more that's stitched. And there we go. Oh yeah, here's the rest of the stitched ones. So this was one of the big blocks. This is A. Already stitched. It also came with floss, the DMC, the call for DMC, and I paid $4 for the entire set. So I got a head start. It wasn't my WIP, but I'm taking it over, and I'm totally thrilled to take it over. And I super appreciate the person who donated this WIP to be loved, and I'm going to give it some love. I don't know that I'm going to get to it this year, but it's definitely on my list. Just one more to show you. So this kit I purchased the day that I received my PET scan. So when you have cancer, you have a PET scan before you do treatment, and you have one after you do treatment. And so that first scan was the one that said that the cancer was gone, or that they had eliminated the cancer. So this was my treat to me. It was a Lori Holt kit, or it is a Lori Holt kit. And this is a fairly recent one. This is the flea market, so I think it's no more than 2 years old. So this is the quilt. And my intention originally was that I was going to make this for my cottage bedroom, but I think I'm going to give it to my granddaughter. So I purchased the templates. They're in my little box here. And I started, and what I have done, and this is just one of two. This is what I have done. I started making the stems, and I started making the petals, all of the petals. And this green, if you don't know, is called Riley Blake green. And here's all of the small petals. So these are already turned and pressed. And here are the other templates to finish making this quilt. And let's see, I know I have it here somewhere. I was going to show you the rest of the fabric. I don't see it. But it is her flea market flower fabric, so that is also a WIP. That is it for all of the ones that I could find in between my small studio and my big studio. I'm still cleaning out tubs of fabric in my big studio, so there's probably some other WIPs, but this is what I have that was easy to get to. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this long. As I mentioned, I don't know if I'll get this all in one video, so you might be seeing this part in a second video, or it might be in the first. But I really appreciate you hanging out with me to kind of look at all these WIPs and revisit them. It was definitely a walk down memory lane for me. And give me a comment down below if you liked this. These were my WIPs. They are not my kitted quilts, so we may do that as well. And now that I've kind of looked at all of them, I'm going to need to make some decisions along with the 3 that I'm currently working on, which one I'm really going to pick up next. So drop a comment down below and let me know which one you would pick to stitch on next, or to quilt on next. And I will see you in a couple weeks. and you can see my progress on the projects that you know I'm working on, and we'll see what else that I've pulled out for Sampler September. So thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. One more quick thing before I go. I wanted to share with you that there is a new retreat that is coming this next fall in upstate New York, in Rochester, and it's being hosted by our good friend Lisa Prims on Greenway, and they're going to have Maggie Bononomy and Kathy Barrick and Beth Seal of Summer House Stitchworks, Teresa Miller of Teresa's Primitive Treasures, and Leanne Van Leyen of 1897 Schoolhouse Samplers, and Susan Stanley of Stitch in Time is going to be giving a lecture. So it was originally announced as October 5th and 7th, but they had the hotel was overbooked, so they are moving it to the 4th and 6th through 6th of October 2023. Go ahead and take a screenshot of that, or go to Hobby House Needleworks. They are also the sponsor, and see what they have available. So super exciting. Also wanted to mention that Michelle Under the Woolen Willow is also sponsoring this. And if you love any of those ladies, I love all of those ladies, then this is definitely an event that you will want to sign up for.